Welcome. I am your host, Manpreet, aka MMA Lock of the Night, and your boy on Twitter at MMALOTN, joined by my guy John Stargarian. You guys can follow him at MMA Fox, as you see there on the screen. And we are here propping you up for UFC Vegas 39, headlined by Mackenzie Dern and Marina Rodriguez. Probably better serving of what we got compared to next week. With I don't even want to talk about that yet, but me and John will talk about that next week. With that said, I do believe we're going to be doing an early start time for next week's card, or was it the one after that, John?
Next week. Next week.
Yeah. So we'll be doing either Tuesday, well, more than likely Tuesday, as long as we got props. So make sure you guys stay tuned, and I'll make sure I'll tweet it out, and John will obviously tweet it out as well. John, just a quick scan through of the card. What are your thoughts here?
I think this is one of the worst cards of the year, to be completely honest, both from a betting perspective and I mean, there are watchable fights, but there's watchable fights every card, right? There's nothing here really that I'm looking at and going, oh, I really can't wait for that. I guess Marina and Dern, just because I'm kind of curious at the dynamic of that fight. But yeah, I mean, I don't know, but we'll break it down. Look, I mean, I'll watch it. It's UFC, right? But
of course,
it's definitely not the most excited I've ever been about a card.
Yeah, I completely understand with that. Shout out to our guy Hot Hands right off the bat. Admitting that he was wrong with the Selecki and Jared Gordon fight. He goes, okay, I admit I was wrong with Selecki, boys. Call me all the names you want. Still had a big one on the night cash.
I have to admit something.
2 3s. Go for it.
I was right about Jared Gordon.
Hot Hands, you still have a spot in the chat here, because I do respect guys that come back and actually own up to it. Something that you do not see often in YouTube. We always have to come here and talk our fights on a week-to-week basis. And I know John as well. They recap their bets the prior time whenever they do the show, Club and Sub podcast, Wednesday nights at 10 p.m. Eastern. Link is in the description below. Make sure you guys go and give them some love and subscribe over there. But then it's the commenters that are they just disappear. They fucking disappear. I forgot who it was. There was one the other week. Earl Smedich and Jalen Turner got absolute shit on my solo podcast there. Like a whole thread, people were making that Medich is going to run through Turner. And then like 3 guys came back and they're like, Locke, you were right. I apologize. I'm like, good. Awesome. Where are these other motherfuckers that are talking shit or are still talking shit? Before we move on, I do just want to quickly drop the last call pretty much on our Dog of the Night challenge, which the deadline is actually on Sunday. I see a bunch of people in the chat already talking about dogs for this card. The deadline is Sunday. First event will be the October 16th card. If you guys are interested, make sure you guys slide in my DMs, whether it's IG or Twitter at MMALOTN on both. It's pretty much you pick one underdog for the next 10 events, and you give them 1, 2, 3 units, accumulate the most profit, and then whoever ends up in the top 3 gets paid out with the prize pool. So if you're interested in that, make sure you guys slide in my DMs. We're already at about 35 in the $25 game, 22 in the $100 game, and we got a new $500 high stakes game.
For Dog of the Night?
Sorry?
For Dog of the Night?
Yeah.
$500 game now?
Yeah, we got 13 people signed up for that already. So
okay.
If that tickles your fancy, John, hit me up, brother. All right. Let's keep this thing. Let's just get this started. Let's not waste any more time. We got a 10-fight slate for you guys, so we'll see how long it takes us to get through this. First and foremost, we got my favorite fade of all time, Charlie Ontiveros, going up against Steve Garcia. We obviously have Ontiveros plus 275, minus 335 against Steve Garcia. Very interesting aspect about this fight is both guys coming from different weight classes and meeting up at 155 pounds. Charlie Ontiveros, always was a 170er in the past. Did fight Kevin Holland up at 185 pounds, although he did weigh in at 182 pounds, came in on short notice, took it up a weight class, and now he's coming back down. And it seems like this is his first time down to 155 pounds in a long time, compared to Steve Garcia. 35er, 45er now will be a 55er and seems to have a decent enough frame. Like he's not all shredded or cut up or anything like that, but he seems to have a good enough striking game to go out there and even grappling game to go out there and give a guy like Charlie Ontiveros some issues. I'm not the highest on playing Garcia at minus 335. Is he going to be in a couple of my Hail Mary parlays? Probably, because I don't think Ontiveros has much of a shot here other than a flashy knockout or a Hail Mary knockout. But I do like Garcia here. One thing I will say, and somebody brought this up to my attention, they're like, Jackson Wink product. When's the last time we heard about Jackson Wink? You know what I mean? Can you remember the last time a super gym has fallen off as much as Jackson Wink has?
Well, you know what's funny? It's like Jackson Wink still gets talked about like it's ATT, where people are like, oh, this guy, he's training at Jackson Wink now. But who's the last guy who was actually good that was training at Jackson Wink? I think you're on point.
It's literally Jones, Holm, Dodson.
Jones
I don't even know if he's still there. If you want to go even deeper, Khalid Murtazaliyev, who fought on Bellator the other week and ended up losing against Anthony Adams. Like, it's very much dwindling. It is not a hotbed like it used to be when you used to have guys like Arlovsky and even Overeem going down there. A bunch of guys that used to be on the team and now they have left shop there. So Steve Garcia is one of the shining stars down there. Is all you need to know. With that said, I think he's enough of a star to go out there and beat a guy like Charlie Ontiveros. So in terms of odds, one that actually caught my eye is the under 2.5. Although it's not the widely available line, roughly around -160. I don't think it's a bad shot. Fight doesn't go to decision, -205. Don't mind that either. And then specifically speaking, Garcia by KO, -115. I like what he brings to the table. Don't really think Ontiveros has much of a shot. If you do think he does, it's probably not by knockout, which currently sits at +600. I'm not taking that sprinkle though, John. How do you feel about this one?
I don't know. It's weird because I kind of was high on Steve Garcia coming into the UFC. I actually bet him when he fought Luis Pena in his debut, and he looked horrible in that fight. Yeah. Obviously, that was a terrible bet. And it was concerning for a number of reasons, because one of the reasons I was so high on him is because he seemed like, he had a lot of regional experience. He was fairly well-rounded. He fought good competition. And so it's like, he's a better boxer than Pena. He should take care of business. And then proceeded to get his back taken 3 times without having a takedown hit on him. But I mean, largely I agree with your take. I think I guess the weird dynamic here is because on a technical level, I think Garcia is operating at a different level than Ontiveros is, if I'm being completely honest, both in terms of grappling. No, I don't really expect Garcia to really attempt to grapple here, and striking in general. I just think he's much better, and I think he's much more sound defensively. And so, in terms of the line, I guess skill-wise, it's about right. For me, the big concern is, like Charlie Ontiveros, I mean, he fought Holland at 185, right? If I'm not mistaken.
Yeah. And he weighed in at 182.
Well, right. So, I mean, he's not a 185er, but, he did get booked in a short notice, spot against Kevin Holland. And Garcia, if I'm not mistaken, I think he fought Joe Warren at like 145 back in the day. He is not a huge lightweight by any sense of the imagination. And so you do have a guy in Ontiveros who's coming down, he's fighting 30 pounds lower than where he was in his last fight. And you have Garcia, who isn't big for the division. And in a fight where I do kind of expect, while I think Garcia is the more technical fighter, he's not afraid to go in there and bite the mouthpiece and let his hands go in the pocket. And that just kind of makes me nervous, especially when you're looking at a line like -300. It's like, I don't want my -300s going in there and being there to take shots, And so, I think if you were to make a money line case, it would probably be, I'd probably make a case for Ontiveros, so I have no interest in betting it. In terms of props, I think you hit it on the head. I believe, if I'm not mistaken, I think Ontiveros has only been to a decision once in his entire career. He's pretty much been the epitome of kill or be killed. There's a bunch of KOs, and he seems very, very fragile. Plus, he's reckless defensively. He's there to get crushed in the pocket. And so I do expect, unless Garcia decides to go away from his bread and butter, which has been his boxing throughout his entire career here and wrestle, I do expect that they're going to strike here. And if they strike, it's very, very hard for me to imagine that this doesn't finish in the 70-75% range. And at -160-ish, it's like 63%, I think. And so I think there's a decent amount of value on the under here. I do like that. But I say, if Garcia doesn't grapple, just like I said, if Johnny Walker doesn't decide to play conservative like he did last week for the first time in his career. So you never really know, right? That's the unknown there.
I thought we had agreed upon not talking about that main event, John. We talked about it before we came on live here. That's all I wanted to discuss about it.
No more. But I do like the under here. I think violence is a great spot. These guys are going to throw down in all likelihood, and I don't think Ontiveros has the durability to tank the damage for 15 minutes.
I will say this. I forgot to say it at the top of the show. 1 p.m. Eastern 1:30 p.m. Eastern start time for this card. So don't get caught napping.
This weekend.
Which I probably don't. This weekend, 1:30 p.m. Eastern start time. So nice and early for us. I believe it's back to a 4 p.m. Eastern next week. But yeah, nice and early for us. So make sure you guys stay tuned for that. John, what are you drinking over there?
I am drinking a New Jersey Oktoberfest from a local New Jersey brewery. It's not bad. Yeah. What do you got on? What do you got going on?
You want to take a guess?
If you say an energy drink, I'm going to be upset. Nice. I respect the White Claw move. I'm all about the White Claw. So I'm here for it.
Again, not much of a drinker, obviously more of into the greenery or the shrubbery, if you want to call it. But I'm getting this feeling of I always want to have at least a drink or two when I'm on with you. So you're somewhat of a bad influence in terms of the alcohol consumption that I'm going to be doing every Thursday evening on a fight night week. But is what it is. Cheers.
Yeah. Cheers. So every Thursday.
Every Thursday.
2 to 3 beers, not the end of the world.
Maybe one seltzer, John. Let's not get too far ahead of ourselves. God damn it. I will smoke a fat J after this, though. I will do that. All right, let's keep this train moving along. We got Lupita Godinez going up against short notice Silvana Gomez Juarez. Just for the sake of the show, I'm probably just going to stick with Juarez. So since we don't need to go through all three names. In terms of odds, I did see Bet Online originally dropped Lupita Godinez as a -600 favorite, and then she got bet down to about that -300 range, which she's currently at. My opinion, line is still a little bit too wide. Savannah Juarez is not this crazy this bum of a short comer. She was actually scheduled to go out there and fight on the Contender Series this coming week, and then they pulled her out to step in here against Godinez, who obviously lost Sam Hughes due to a cornerman testing positive for COVID. Once running the tape, you'll see a couple, familiar names on her record, most notably Ariane Lipski, where she actually went over there to Poland during the peak of that Lipski era over there, the Queen of Violence era, and went of 5 hard rounds with her. They pretty much a striking battle the entire time. Lipski did a good job in terms of kind of keeping her on the outside and kind of getting her to react to Lipski. It almost seemed like Juarez was like starstruck in a sense, like she may have given her a little bit too much respect there. But now at 36 years old, 10-2, exactly double the amount of experience that Godinez is bringing into the cage here, I think this is a good shot for her to go out there and pull off an upset in her UFC debut. Godinez, decent striker. She's actually fought up here, up in my neck of the woods against Lindsay Garbat, who was very old at that point in time, but had a boxing background and transitioned to MMA a little bit too late. I think that the level of competition, the skepticism that I had on the Juarez side, you can almost put on the Godinez side a little bit too, right? Vanessa Demopoulos not really turning out to be what a lot of people initially thought she was going to be. Lindsay Garbat, like I said, transitioned to MMA a little bit too late, and Godinez went out there and still did work against her. And then the Jessica Penne fight, just putting herself in precarious positions like over and over again, knowing that her best shot is probably just staying at distance, crashing forward, landing a couple shots and getting back out, but she just keeps ending up in the clinch positions, keeps ending up against the cage. Very raw and green in her career still, right? That's something that we can say. Now you got Juarez, a striker, a hard-nosed striker that could possibly give her some issues too. I don't mind a dog shot here on Juarez, and I don't mind her winning this fight via decision as well. Unfortunately, according to Best Fight Odds, we don't have many props to work with here. Over 2.5, -260, and then they just have Godinez inside the distance, +310. Godinez by decision, -105. I'm going to be keeping my eye out for Juarez by decision. That's the prop that I'm kind of leaning on here, and I can't wait to see what they price that as. I'm pretty certain I know how you feel about the specific matchup, so I can't wait to hear you break it down and hear what your thoughts are on this fight.
Yeah, so I'm on the opposite side of you here. I haven't made a bet yet. I do like, in terms of looking at the props, I like the Godinez by decision at -105. I bet Jessica Penne in Godinez's debut against her, so I obviously had some concerns about her coming in. But part of that was, Penne's a big, big girl for the weight class, and she's a girl who she got destroyed by Joanna Jędrzejczyk and Jessica Andrade. But other than that, had fought a lot of really good fighters and hung pretty tough with them and beaten some of them. And so I just thought, that just didn't make sense for a debut. But I am fairly high on Godinez's game. She is fairly well-rounded. She keeps a fairly high output. She's an excellent boxer. And I think, one of the things the most, I think she's fairly defensively sound. We've seen her get hit at times when she's slowed, in the second half of that Demopoulos fight, which, by the way, if you guys haven't seen that fight, that's actually a great fight. If you see the second half of it, it just turns into pretty much an all-out war, which you don't get in WMMA very much. But yeah, look, I see it. It's funny because when the Juarez line came out, I saw it and I'm like, oh, Godinez -600. That probably makes sense. I haven't taped this girl. Then it came down to -210, and I was like, holy shit, I have to take a look at this. And so I looked at the fight, and I do kind of see what people like about Juarez. Obviously, for a girl who's been fighting strictly regionally, She is very, very technical. Her shots are pretty straight. She seems to have a clue everywhere. What I don't really like is, first of all, like you touched on, she has fought 2 fighters who are of decent caliber, but she's lost both those fights pretty cleanly. And since then, she's been fighting really nothing but cans. And while she's made some of it look pretty easy, I haven't really liked what happens when she comes into the pocket. She throws a lot of her kicks naked. Her head tends to be pretty stationary, and she's pretty okay to exchange shots in the pocket there. And so when I look at this fight, it's like, I'm pretty sure Loopy's a better boxer, even if technically they might be close. But where I think there's a huge gap is I think the defense of Godinez. She just has much better head movement here than Juarez does, and I think her output's a lot more reliable. And I also do think if anybody in this fight has grappling upside, I think it's Godinez. Now, I wouldn't lay minus 300 on her where she is right now, but I do like the decision line. It's kind of funny because Godinez gets talked about as like a power striker a lot. And I saw a lot of Godinez KO takes when she went to fight Penne, but Godinez, I don't believe has a KO either as an amateur or a professional. She throws high volume and she throws hard, but I don't think she generates a lot of power for whatever reason. And so I don't really expect the KO. And I do think Juarez, if she does get put on the mat, is defensively responsible enough so that a submission isn't particularly likely here. So I like the Godinez by decision. If you get that around even money, like I'm seeing minus 105 right now, I'm probably going to take that if I get that on one of my books. I think that's a pretty decent spot.
Yeah, I like that spot as well. I did kind of skip on the fact that I do think that Godinez has grappling upside in this matchup if she actually decides to go out there and implement that. Yeah. But I wouldn't be surprised to see her go out there and just try to go strike for strike and see if she can out-volume Juarez in this spot. Last thing I want to say about this matchup, if you guys haven't seen Juarez's last fight, it's on Fight Pass. Probably the worst reffing I've ever seen in my goddamn life with the referee trying to help out the other opponent, completely getting whooped on, having her leg chewed up. There's instances where you see the referee helping her back to her feet so she can continue the fight in the middle of the round. Like, absolutely egregious takes there. So if you guys want to see some crazy reffing, make sure you guys go check that out again. It's on Fight Pass. All right, let's move on to the next fight here. We got Charles Rosa going up against Damon Jackson. In terms of odds, we're looking at minus 190 for Jackson, plus 165 the return on Charles Rosa. Now, initially when the fight was announced and I saw the lines and all that stuff, I was like, the under seems like a pretty damn good spot in pretty much any Damon Jackson fight. 24 fights, only one of them going to a decision. Even the Mirsad Bektik fight finishes him in the 3rd round after making a tremendous comeback in his UFC return as well. I remember cashing that round 3 prop as well. That was probably one of my highs of my betting career, I would say. But with that said, it's hard to not believe that Jackson's going to be able to ground this fight when he wants. Like, I think he'll be able to get the takedowns. He'll be able to grind out Rosa. We've seen Rosa have issues in terms of getting back to his feet, kind of, dealing with takedown defense and all that type of stuff. And although he was a lock of the night play for me last time around against Justin James, that motherfucker made me sweat way more than I should have, especially considering the skill differential that I was expecting to see in that fight. James had a very good 3rd round, I should say. That was probably the round that I thought he would be weakest in, but knowing that he had like 20 grand riding on himself, I'm sure he wanted to fight to the best of his abilities, and he still came up short there. But Charles Rosa definitely looks like he's diminishing in terms of his skills. Good jiu-jitsu, good jiu-jitsu defense as well. As we've seen, he's been in tremendously close and tight submission attempts from his opponents and has been able to kind of gut it out. In the striking realm, one thing I always notice is when he's in the southpaw stance, likes to kick a lot more. Like you can even hear his coaches yelling out Wonder Boy and all that stuff. But when he switches back to orthodox, more of a boxing-based style. So it's kind of easy to read what he's going to be doing based on what stance he's in his striking realm. But with that said, I don't think there's going to be much opportunity for him to be switching stances or striking in this spot, because I think that Jackson knows his best way to win this fight is to get the fight to the ground. And then he's going to be trying submission after submission after submission. And as we've seen, historically speaking, Charles Rosa is really good in terms of defending those and getting out of it, gutting it out, whatever it may be. So I do like the fight goes to decision all of a sudden, minus 150-ish. I do like that Jackson via decision is roughly around plus 165 as well. I like Jackson in this spot, man. He's going to be a leech, just like his nickname, and I expect him to do exactly that this weekend against Charles Rosa. How do you feel about this one, brother?
Yeah, it's like a weird fight because, I saw the opening number, and when I saw the opening number, which I think was like Rosa minus 140, I was like, yeah, that makes sense. And then, money starts coming in on Jackson, and I'm like, fuck, I'm definitely playing Charles Rosa plus 150 because I've always been a lot higher on Rosa, I think, than the market has at large. And look, I faded him in spots. I played Minner against him, but I've always kind of just been like, I think people underrate Charles Rosa. People forget Charles Rosa was up 2-0 on Shane Burgos, and then got finished in round 3. Like, I bet him against Kevin Aguilar. Rosa's a good striker. He's janky as fuck, like it doesn't look pretty, but he gets it done though. Like even the Janes fight, outside of him getting hurt by Janes, that was pretty much one-way traffic on the feet. Like it didn't look, he got hurt by him, because Janes hits really hard. But like I think Rosa, people are like he's a bad striker because it looks ugly, but like Elias Theodoro, it looked ugly and it was always effective too, right? And I actually think it's kind of like a similar style. The problem for me with Charles Rosa is, and this is the problem I tape, is like his fights have become so predictable. It's just like, does guy check grappling box? If so, what are the odds he gets subbed from guard? If the answer is not good, probably don't bet Charles Rosa, right? Yeah. Because Rosa just, it's so frustrating too, because it's like the guy's a Ricardo Laborio black belt. So in theory, he should know what he's doing. He should be able to learning at ATT for as long as he was there. This guy should know how to get up off a takedown, right? And it's not like, some really good guys have held him down, like Bryce Mitchell holding you down. I can't get on your case too much for. But like Dennis Seaver passing your guard 15 times and holding you down for 11 minutes, I can get on your case for that, right? And like I know that was early in his career, but not a whole lot has changed in the time since. And so it makes for an interesting fight, right? Because kind of to your point, Jackson's going to come out here and try to wrestle him. Like if Jackson stands with him, I think Rosa is going to do bad things to him. Not saying he'll finish him, but I do think, Rosa is going to be clearly the better striker in this matchup. But, he is fairly easy to cut off, and he doesn't even have like basic takedown defense downs. He's very easy to take down. And on the mat, it's like, I think Jackson holds him down. My big question with Jackson in this fight, though, is what does his cardio look like if this goes past 2 rounds, right? Because, it's very easy to say Jackson's going to go down there and control him for 15 minutes. But look at Jackson's career. Most of the guys he's finishing are early in the first or early in the second round, right? He's going out there, he's taking backs, and he's finishing guys. And I do think he's going to get Rosa down here, and I think he's going to get dominant position, especially early in the fight. But at this point, I've seen Rosa in 3 deep arm triangles from good submission grapplers and not get tapped yet. He's not going to give his back up to Jackson. And if he does, he fights hands well. I'm pretty confident unless Rosa gets badly compromised on the feet, he's probably not getting submitted in this spot. And so the question becomes, can Jackson do that for 15 minutes? And maybe he can. But we also saw when Jackson fought Kevin Aguilar, Jackson basically was winning that fight, controlled him for a full round in round 2, and then gassed out and got finished. And I don't think that's out of the realm of possibility, especially because I expect Jackson to continue to pursue the takedowns. And Rosa, while good guys with good cardio and who are good on top aren't going to get subbed from bottom, if you get reckless in there, he will throw submissions at you and put you in danger. And so I do think there's a chance that, after the first 6 or 7 minutes, this could start to get dicey and maybe scrambles become live and maybe he can get a dominant position or Jackson just stops hitting the takedowns because he's gassed out. But again, I couldn't bet Charles Rosa here. I said it before he fought Derek Minner, and it's like, I know Minner gasses out every fight, but when a guy's going to concede dominant position, it's not that hard to keep your cardio together. And that's sort of how I feel here. If Jackson's smart, he should be able to ride him out on top here with no problem. I get a Rosa bet. It's just not for me, to be honest. And I get a Jackson bet, to be honest. So what I like here from a prop perspective is minus 150 goes the distance. There is some chance Rosa could sub him late, but I think the chances of Jackson finishing Rosa on the feet are very, very low. I think the chances of him finishing Rosa on the mat are very, very low. And considering I expect Jackson to spend the majority of this fight in the dominant position, and I don't think he's likely to finish there, minus 150 seems like a bit of a gift to me, to be honest.
I will say this, a line that actually just caught my eye as I was looking through it. Rosa by KO at plus 1,000, considering
that's not bad,
right? Considering the skill difference in the striking here. If Rosa, manages to get back to his feet and Jackson does start slowing down, he might either kick to the face here and plus 1,000.
And Jackson's been finished a few times. He's gotten flatlined a couple times.
Exactly, very sketchy chin and durability on him. Yeah. But it all depends on if Rosa can, stop takedowns or get back to his feet effectively enough. So exactly. All right, let's move on to the next fight here. We got the return of King Kong Romanov going up against Jared Vanderaa. In terms of odds, as you expected, minus 700 for Alexander Romanov, plus 500 on Jared Vanderaa. I will say this. I tweeted it out earlier this week as well. If you told me Jared Vanderaa was going to go out there and outstrike Justin Tava for 15 minutes, I would have muted you, blocked you, unfollowed, all of that shit. And then I would have quickly reversed it after the fight because I would have looked like a complete dumbass. But with that said, how many people were actually expecting Vanderaa to go out there and be or have striking success against Justin Tafa, right? If they say so, they're absolutely full of shit because I'm pretty sure, and even I broke it down, I felt the way for Vanderaa to win that fight was use that Dan Henderson wrestling clinch style that he has kind of using and try to drag this fight to the ground. But it's like he didn't even attempt to take down. It seemed like his game plan was, I'm going to put combinations out there, but anytime Justin Tafa throws anything at me, I'm going to throw 2 or 3 more shots to kind of double him up and triple him up in strikes. And that's exactly what he ended up doing that night. His cardio looked great. But you could also kind of attest that to the fact that it was just a striking battle. There wasn't really any clinching or grappling going on to really, suck out the gas tank of a guy like Jared Vanderaa, like when he fought against, fellow countrymen of like Alexander Romanov, Sergey Spivak. A lot of people are expecting a similar fight here where Romanov to go out there and just take Vanderaa down, overwhelm him, and get him out of there. But man, shit will get fishy if this hits round 2 and 3, which is why I'm not willing to make that minus 700 on Romanov at this point in time. I do have a multi-event parlay with him on it around that minus
700 now.
Yeah, it's up
Holy
there, bro.
Shit.
Yeah, I see that reaction there, John, leads me to believe after this podcast we're gonna get a Vanderaa bet from you. Is all I'm gonna say.
I have no plans to, but I'm like blown away.
With that said, Romanov rounds 1 and 2, Vanderaa round 3 plus 2,000 has my eye. I want to take a little bit of a sprinkle on that round 3 because I feel like Romanov, as we saw in the Juan Espino fight, good God, did he slow down? And we all know Oscar Grammy-worthy performance with that nut shot because it looked like it tapped. Like I know they're showing like the slow-mo replay, which makes it look worse. But if you watch it in real time, it was a legit tap. Let's be honest. It was a legit knee tap to the cup. He quit. He was looking for a way out. He found a way out. And that's not a good look for a guy who had the image of King Kong Romanov going into that fight. With that said, if he goes out there and just absolutely demolishes Vanderaa in the first round or two, I think people are going to soon forget about that, which will, for us analysts and cappers and guys that look for edges, will be beneficial for us when he goes out there and fights somebody even better and who could survive that early onslaught from him and then start to take over later in the fight. With that said, easy props here, in my opinion, right? You take Romanov round 1, minus 105, or Romanov round 2 plus 475, and then just have that insurance on Vanderaa in round 3, which is currently sitting around plus 2250. I'm seeing plus 3400 on FanDuel, which is absolutely insane. In terms of an official prediction, though, I am going to go with Romanov. I'm going to say second round TKO, similar to what Spivak was able to do, but I am hesitant with Romanov. It's very hard for me to back a guy with a sketchy gas tank, especially at heavy chalk odds. How do you feel about this matchup, brother?
Let me tell you something, Mark. There is a spot on my wall, an empty plaque with the name Romanov on it that is waiting for his scalp. And it will be there one day. This I can promise you, okay? I don't think it's going to be Jared Vanderaa that gets it there, though.
Okay.
I am shocked that he's minus 700, if I'm being honest.
Yeah.
Like, to the point that I'm like, should I just poke Vanderaa for posterity and just see what happens? But like, if I hadn't seen the Sergey Spivak fight, a plus 500 would be an automatic bet here. The problem is, Spivak's an okay grappler, but he's nothing special, and he looked like world class when he got on top of Vanderaa there. Vanderaa just didn't have a way to get up. And we know for a fact that what Romanov is going to do is he's going to come and attempt takedowns pretty much every second the fight is standing. Like, to beat Romanov, you have to do one of two things. You either have to be very good at defending takedowns or very, very good at good at getting off your back. I don't even think you need to be great, but good at getting off your back. Unfortunately, I don't think Vanderaa is good at either of those things. And so, what we're going to get is someone who just plays right into Romanov's game. Romanov's going to go there. He's going to take him down. He's going to get on top of him. And he's probably going to smash him. I will say, kind of to your point, I think if Vanderaa can provide some resistance in this fight, in the clinch or whatnot, or deny the takedowns for a bit, maybe instead of, like, you saw Romanov go, deep into the second round against Roque Martinez, but Martinez is on his back the whole time. If he can maybe make him work for the takedowns a bit, you might see a dynamic where Romanov starts to slow down here bad, and eventually, the tide turns. But I'm not too bullish on it happening, and I'm not too bullish on Vanderaa defending those takedowns. So I don't think this is going to be the guy that we fade Alexander Romanov with. I'll tell you what, if I don't bet Vanderaa and Romanov loses here, it's going to be tragic because he will never get the line that I want against him. In terms of a prop, I'll tell you what I like. Romanov's kind of been known as like a submission grappler for that forearm choke. But, I was chatting with somebody this week about it. The one thing I'll say for Vandeera's grappling is he did a pretty good job fighting off submissions against Spivak. And I don't think it's funny because like he does submit a lot of guys, but I actually don't think Romanov's submission game is anything special at all. If I'm being completely honest, I think
it's just brutish. Like
brutish. That's exactly who's getting forearm choke in 2020 in the UFC. You know
exactly.
Marcos de Lima, who I bet.
You'll never live that one down, John.
No,
you'll never do.
No. I was huge on him too.
Yep, I remember that. I think we had a discussion about that fight before it happened. I think it was September last year, right?
Yeah.
Holy fuck! It's almost been a full year. God damn.
But what I will say is, I do think he's going to finish Vanderaa, but I think KO being up at like plus 180-ish, I think I've seen between like plus 160 and plus 200 depending on your book, but I think that's pretty good because I do think I think it's much more likely than submission, if I'm being honest. And I think Vanderaa finish is probably 85 to 90% of his win equity here. So I like the Vanderaa by KO here.
Yeah, that's actually not too bad. I just noticed that as well. Submission plus 145, KO plus 180. Very interesting. I do like that angle there. But that's a good way of trying to maximize that minus 700 with his best win condition. All right, let's move on to the next fight here. We got Chris Gutierrez going up against Philippe Colares. This is the prelim headliner, if I'm not mistaken. In terms of odds, we're looking at, minus 240 for Gutierrez, plus 200 on Philippe Colares. And I've already taken a half unit stab here on Philippe Colares at plus 250. And I feel like he's a really good spot now. A lot of people are just absolutely shitting on the guy, right? Very hittable. Okay, yeah, sure. Never been finished in his career. Manages to move forward. Even in the Montel Jackson fight, even though he's getting hit with everything in the kitchen sink, the guy's still fighting pretty hard in round 3. Yeah. I mean, he's still going forward. Manages to attempt at least 8 takedowns over his last 4 fights inside the UFC, which is all you need to know in terms of his knack to go out there and try to drag the fight to the ground. And what does Chris Gutierrez do best, right? It's his calf kick. If you take away that calf kick, what is he really good at? He's a decent striker, don't get me wrong. Has, okay, but low output, low volume, needs that calf kick to be successful. And it just came since the Vince Morales fight, right? He was an abysmal fighter before that. The Geraldo de Freitas fight, he was the underdog, right? Like, it just, and even that fight.
600 against Hayoni?
Gutierrez. Gutierrez was against Barcelos?
Yeah.
He was just pulling it up here. Minus 550 Barcelos, plus 425 Chris Gutierrez. Again, that's Barcelos. That is Barcelos.
Yeah.
With that said, the Vince Morales fight is where everything really started to change for him, and a lot of people started giving him the respect that a lot of people think he deserves. Right? Goes out there, goes to a draw with Cody Durden, where Durden has tremendous success in that first round, gets a 10-8, and then short notice, up a weight class, is not able to complete more than 1 takedown in the second or third rounds there, which is why we end up getting a draw in that fight. And then he goes out there and fights a striker in Andre Ewell, who, lagged pretty much on a silver platter to be chewed up there, and that's exactly what happened in that fight. Now you're getting a guy in Philippe Colares who's just going to be crowding him the entire time, right? He's not going to stay at that range. He's not going to give him enough time to administer as much damage as he's been able to do in the past to these fighters' legs. And again, say what you want about Colares being super hittable. I'm not worried about Chris Gutierrez knocking him out. The last time he finished anybody with strikes was Jimmy Flick, like 3 or 4 years ago. And we know what Jimmy Flick striking is like, right? Yeah. Before that, it was like years before that, right? We obviously know it gets harder and harder to put guys away with strikes the further you get into your UFC career. And I think that Colares will be able to eat everything that this guy throws at him, but continue to move forward, close the distance, push him up against the cage, drag this fight to the ground, hop on the back if he needs to. I think he's got it, man. I think the decision prop here is a damn good way to go for Philippe Colares. I believe it's sitting at excuse me, plus 420 for Colares to win by decision. That's my favorite prop on it. A little bit of a sprinkle on Colares by sub at plus 725 is not too bad. Obviously Gutierrez sub by Hani Barcelos. Again, 2 completely different fighters. Barcelos obviously much better than what Colares brings to the table, but Colares still a black belt, can still threaten, can still really pressure this guy. I don't understand the Gutierrez love. I just saw people throwing him into parlays throughout the week. And again, I don't really understand it. This is a bad stylistic matchup for him. And this is almost a market overcorrection, in my opinion, on Chris Gutierrez, where it's just like, okay, he had a good performance against Andre Ewell where he tore up that leg, striker. Beat Cody Durden on short notice where he got 10-8, or not beat, sorry, drew with Cody Durden where he got 10-8 in the first round with grappling. Geraldo de Freitas was close to getting that decision. You could have easily made a case for a Geraldo de Freitas in that fight. What am I not seeing here, John?
I might. It's funny because I like pre-tape. You know, you and I were chatting earlier in the week about this. You mentioned like Colares, and I hadn't taped it yet. And because like in my head pre-tape, I was like, I might just lay the chalk with Gutierrez, like because the lasting image in my mind about Felipe Colares, it's not the Luke Sanders fight, it's not the Pilarte fight, it's not even the Newson fight. It's like Montel Jackson just big brothering him, and it always makes me think in my head that like Colares just really can't hang athletically, even though what my head should be saying is Montel Jackson is an athletic freak, and that's all he has. Whereas, Colares just has a huge athleticism disadvantage there. But after I looked at it, I kind of agree with you. I am very anti-Gutierrez in general. Look, he's an elite leg kicker, no doubt about it, but he's a specialist, right? I bet Vince Morales against him because in my head, unfortunately, didn't play out like this. I'm like, if after Morales eats 7 or 8 kicks, he's going to say, okay, I need to bite the mouthpiece. And once he gets in the pocket, he's going to kill this guy. And I still believe that to this day. If Morales just forced the pocket fight, he would have absolutely killed Chris Gutierrez.
He's content with staying in kicking range and striking range, right?
He only threw like 9 strikes the entire fight. It was crazy. But, and almost the same thing with Ewell too, right? Like if Ewell had a better gas tank and was a little more aggressive about going forward, I think he probably handles him. You saw early in that fight, whenever Ewell let his hands go, he was touching him. I think Gutierrez is a one-trick pony. The thing is, MMA as it is today, and it may not be like this in 5 years, very few guys check kicks. And so having that specialist ability is enough a lot of the time, unless guys are tough and they're going to go forward on you. Now, Colares is going to go forward on you, though. He is going to go forward. He's going to try to take you down. I question a little bit whether about the physical strength aspect and whether he's a strength to drag him down. But I'll say this, you mentioned it to me earlier in the week, and if you guys don't follow him, John Kelly DFS actually posted a pretty interesting thread about this today on Twitter, and it was basically just kind of showing how easily Gutierrez has been put down once he's been forced into the clinch. And that is kind of Colares' game. I would say Luke Sanders is probably a better wrestler than Chris Gutierrez, which I know sounds like blasphemy because it's Luke Sanders, but Luke Sanders is actually a pretty good wrestler. Yes. I believe he's a Division I wrestler. And, he was getting taken down by Colares late in that fight. Montel got taken down by him and got his back taken. I mean, Gutierrez at minus 250 is crazy. Like the guy, to justify that line, basically has to look at the Morales fight. If Colares doesn't just stand there and let him kick him, which I don't expect he will, I even think the boxing exchanges have a chance to potentially be competitive right here. I don't think Colares is much of a boxer, but I don't think Gutierrez is much of a boxer either. And all the grappling upside is in Colares' favor here. So, I do make Gutierrez a slight favorite just because, that one he has the one elite weapon, I think, in the entire fight, and I think that is enough to justify a favorite. But I'm going to probably bet Colares here, and in terms of props, I agree. We had Dern on his back for a while. Gutierrez has gotten grappled by a couple guys and not gotten subbed. Barcelos as well, Valiev. He does defend submissions well, but I'm not sure he works up if he gets taken down here. I think he probably gets his back taken. I like the decision prop as well. I think plus 400 for something that's probably closer to like plus 200 is a great deal.
Yeah, glad we're kind of on the same page there. I do remember having that discussion with you earlier this week. Excuse me. And you hadn't touched the tape yet. I'm like, as soon as you touch the tape, you're probably going to see where I end up seeing. And luckily, I was right on that aspect. So, if Gutierrez can go out there and live up to that minus 250 price tag, great. But that will be dependent on Colares obliging with the distance kickboxing fight, and that's not exactly his style. 8 takedowns per fight, that's absolutely crazy. So very interested to see how that one plays out. So we got one dog there. I am picking 4 underdogs on this card to win on this 10-fight card. That is, I believe, the second one that I've chosen. Looking forward to hearing your thoughts on the other ones because next one is coming right up as the curtain jerker for the main card here between Phil Hawes and Deron Winn. Minus 325 on Phil Hawes, plus 265 the return on Deron Winn. And before we do get into this quickly, hit that like, hit that subscribe, and then obviously go over there and show John some love with the Club and Sub podcast every Wednesday night, 10 p.m. Eastern. Link is in the description below. Make sure you guys go sub to his channel and follow along with him and his buddies as they break down the card for you guys every week. All right. This fight here between two seeming wrestlers, right? We got Deron Winn with a wrestling background, Phil Hawes with a bit of a wrestling background too, which leads me to believe when we have these types of fights, they'll more than likely be taking place in the or the striking realm, right? Like guys are going to have to be forced to go out there and strike unless in the fight, we find out that one guy is a much better wrestler than the other guy, and he's able to kind of control that top position. We haven't really seen Phil Hawes off of his back, which, I'm not really having much confidence in that he'll actually be cut off of his back. But the same can be said about Winn, right? Both of these guys, whenever you have wrestlers coming into the MMA world, it takes them a while to really adapt that jiu-jitsu game, especially off of their back. Now, in the striking round, one thing that we can all agree on, especially if you watch the tape here, Phil Hawes isn't the greatest off of his back foot. It seems like he gets hurt almost every single time a fighter is forcing him to move backwards. Luckily for him, he's had the grappling and wrestling advantage in his fights where he's been able to take these guys down. Or in the Imavov case, which I still don't completely understand, because we saw two completely different Nasruddin Imavovs, from the Phil Hawes fight to the Ian Heinisch fight, where, in the Imavov fight with Hawes, he just kept getting wrapped up against the cage, didn't seem to have any knowledge in terms of how to disengage from the clinch, get on the outside, and get his striking going again, because anytime they're at distance, he was letting him up close to finishing Hawes on numerous occasions. And then in the Ian Heinisch fight, he just absolutely flips the script and destroys Ian Heinisch in that fight. And then the next fight for Hawes, Kyle Daukaus. Again, Phil Hawes coming in as a very slight underdog, plus 110, but has his wrestling to kind of bail him out of bad situations. Kyle Daukaus not as good off of his back as a lot of people expected him to be, myself included. I had the under 2.5 in that fight, considering that if Phil Hawes did take this fight to the ground, I thought Kyle Daukaus would be able to throw up a submission and catch him. But credit to Phil Hawes, his cardio held up enough.
In fairness, sorry, I don't mean to cut you off, but in fairness, I don't think Daukaus had the gas to throw up a submission by the time he went down, to be honest. Because, and who expected him to gas there?
Well, who expected EPO Hawes to show up either, right? Like, I thought that guy would slump over and fucking eat shit, right? But he is showing improvements. Let's give him that credit. But with that said, I think he's going to struggle here against Winn in terms of, especially if this fight goes later, because he can't desperation takedown anymore. Like, this is, it reminds me of Edmund Shabazian against Darren Stewart. Completely different stylistical matchups, but Edmund Shabazian had the grappling advantage in that fight. And when that was stretched into the third rounds, gassed out of his mind, he was still lucky enough that he could take down Darren Stewart. When that happened against Derek Brunson, couldn't take him down and got absolutely blasted. Kind of similar here in Winn, but with that said, Winn, not this crazy knockout puncher either, right? He's wide winging with his hooks, kind of uses it more as an intimidation factor to push his opponents back into the cage and then start working for the takedowns there. I think Winn's going to go out there, try to push him up against the cage early in this fight, try to wear on him, and then try to be more successful with the takedowns later in this fight. But both guys have skeptical gas tanks. Yeah. For me, this should not be minus 325. This is a huge overcorrection in terms of Phil Hawes plus 110 against Kyle Daukaus, goes out there, beats him in a decision, and now all of a sudden he's minus 325 against Winn, who used to be a pretty heavy favorite back in his prior fights too, right? Goes out there, beats Antonio Arroyo, good win for him, but Arroyo dog shit takedown defense, so he was able to get bailed out there. For me, it all depends on what Phil Hawes looks like and what his cardio looks like if he's forced to strike for 15 minutes, and will he be able to defend takedowns the later that this fight goes. Flip side is the same kind of question with Winn, but does that really make it a minus 320 worth for Phil Hawes in this situation? I don't think so. And people want to continue to rag on Winn being 5'6" at this weight class, but the guy's pretty much been undersized his entire career. Wrestler, fucking UFC fighter, a pro MMA fighter, and he makes do with it. And I think this is another situation he'll be able to take advantage of that. So, Winn. Decision obviously is probably what I'm leaning with most, plus 470. The overs in this fight aren't too bad either. Over 2.5 at minus 105 is kind of what I'm seeing. And you know me, John. You know me. I got to look at that round 3 prop for Winn, plus 2150, maybe. But I just don't know if he has that knockout power. It's more so going to have to come from Hawes exhaustion than anything. How do you feel about this fight, brother?
Well, first of all, now, Winn was closed as a favorite against Darren Stewart. He closed about minus 150 against Gerald Meerschaert. Would you line Phil Hawes at minus 300 or 350 against either GM3 or Darren Stewart? Or even close to that?
Maybe against Stewart, but not against GM3 because of the submission threat at all times from GM3.
Minus 300 is such a big line. Like, right?
That's a ridiculous line.
Like, when I see that, it's like you either have to have fought nobody in my mind to be a plus like 270 to someone like Phil Hawes. Like, you have to be like Jacob Malkoun, who he knocked out in 18 seconds, who had 4 fights, all against Australian bums, and came into the UFC and got knocked out. But, like, I'll be honest, this is going to be a hot take. I don't think Hawes is the better grappler here. I think he's a reasonable grappler. My issues with Winn, I think Winn is actually an excellent wrestler. Like, if you actually look at his entries and his takedowns, he is operating on a level that most guys in the UFC aren't. The problem is, as a grappler, he's quite poor, if that makes sense. He's a very good wrestler, and he's very good at getting the fight to the mat. He just doesn't really have much to do when he gets it there. And on the other side of things, it's not easy to take down a guy who's 5'6", especially if you're 6'1". Like, if you wrestle at all, getting, like, I wrestled and I was always short for my weight class. It's much easier to get it on someone's hips if you're 5 inches shorter than them than if you're 5 inches taller on them. I don't really see Hawes having a ton of grappling success, and I could see Winn having it. Look, I touched on the fact that Winn was a favorite against GM3 and Stewart, and look, I bet him in both those spots, and I was wrong in both those spots. But the bottom line is that wasn't for no reason. Winn is undersized, like you touched on, but he does have a style that kind of works at this level for winning fights, which is on the feet, he's kind of going forward and trying to throw output. And other than that, he's attempting takedowns constantly. Like, his work rate, he's always doing things. His actions per minute are quite high. Yes, his gas tank can be sketchy, but, we saw it last fight. Even round 3 against Ahoyo, he was tired, but he was still going forward and attempting takedowns. It's not like he was slowing down at all. Whereas a Hawes on the other side, I don't think Hawes is some kind of an output machine. He looked better against Daukaus, but if you actually contextualize that fight, round 1 was a very close round. I think Hawes won it on 2 cards, but it was very close. Round 2, he almost gets finished. He gets landed on a bunch the first minute and 40 seconds of round 2. And then out of nowhere, Kyle Daukaus just suffers cardio death. You see, there's a very distinct moment in the fight where Daukaus kind of just like flops against the fence. And like, that's it. The rest of the fight is kind of Hawes walking him down. But even in that, like, I'm watching it, I'm not seeing Hawes doing anything particularly sophisticated. He's not keeping a high output. He's basically throwing a jab and a body shot, which is fine. And it worked there. And like, credit to him for winning a decision. Right. But I look at this fight, I'm like, does Hawes have a big edge on minutes? It's like, maybe if he can keep Winn on the outside of his jab and play the outside game, but that's not really his game. Like, traditionally, Hawes' game, if he's not wrestling you, it's been to swing big bombs and try to put you out. Maybe Hawes has added a new layer, and if Hawes has suddenly become a master of distance here, then he's going to be a serious threat in this division, but I'm not really sold on that at all. And so, look, I do favor Hawes. Like, don't get me wrong. And I think, both guys are hittable, and Hawes being bigger and longer certainly helps in that respect in terms of, getting his shots off a little easier. And I think a Hawes KO, especially early, is very, very live. But, like, if this goes to a decision, are you confident Phil Hawes winning a decision here? Like, I'm not at all. I actually I favor Winn fairly significantly if it goes the distance, to be honest with you. Because I know Winn's going to try to force his way forward and hit takedowns. One of the things I didn't keep in mind when he fought GM3 was he might not try to wrestle him because of the sub threat, which I should have thought of. There's not going to be a sub threat here. He's going to try to put Hawes down on the ground. And I trust, even if they're gassed out, look, we've seen Hawes quit in fights when he's gassed out. Dern Winn, when he's gassed out, even if he has nothing left, will keep coming. Phil Hawes will not, and I trust that. And, while I think Hawes has more KO upside here, I don't think, like, Winn can't knock him out. Hawes has been hurt in just about every fight I've seen of his. Literally, like, every fight. And so he has no good defensive tendencies. If Winn can get in there, he's got a shot to put him out. So, like, I don't mind Hawes as a favorite. You want to line him minus 150, minus 185? Like, I get that. He's probably a better athlete. He's probably more technical. He hits harder. But, like, with all of the red flags around Phil Hawes, now he's getting minus 330 on some books. Like, what is happening here? So I'm betting Darren Winn on the money line. In terms of the fight, I think the most likely path for Winn is decision, and the decision line is plus 500, which seems fucking mad to me. So I like Winn by decision. I like Darren Winn on the fight. Phil Hawes is a flake. Maybe he comes out here and proves me wrong. But whatever, we're going to keep fading him until he beats someone I respect. So that's the...
I will say this: for Duran Winn's last fight, he was plus 170 against Antonio Hoyo.
Against Antonio Hoyo, man.
Yeah, it's just I think people like it's almost like he's the joke of the MMA community, being 5'6" or 5'7", whatever the fuck he is, at 185 pounds, and people just saying, oh, like he doesn't deserve to be in the UFC. He doesn't deserve to be a fucking middleweight, but he's making it work.
He beat Tom Lawler, who I know is like old, but like Tom Lawler is not
solid wrestler,
is a decent wrestler, right? And, So
exactly. Yeah, no, I like I do like Winn here as well. I do have a half unit shot on him at plus 260, which I think is just a crazy line as well. Yeah, so I had to take the shot there as well. All right, before we lose our brain cells talking about this fight and completely getting the chat to turn on us here, let's move on to the next fight. We got Maria Agapova going up against Sabina Mazo. In terms of odds, we're looking at minus 180 for Mazo, plus 160 the return on Agapova. Interesting fight here as well, right? You want to talk about like lines correcting themselves now? Maria Agapova no longer a minus 1200 favorite. I do agree with the line that she's currently at around plus 160, even if you wanted to drop it down a little bit lower to maybe plus 140 or so. But you got to believe the best way for Agapova to win this fight is, take the blueprint that's been set out by girls like Justine Kish, who was minutes away from getting a win there, Alexis Davis, Marina Moroz as well. Take down Mazo. Don't let her get comfortable in that striking round, but is that something we can trust Maria Agapova to do for 15 minutes or even 10 minutes? I don't know. I think that we'll see a drop off from her after that first round. Not saying she's going to go balls to the walls just again like that Dobson fight last time around, because I'm sure she's learned a thing or two from there. But I think that after that first round, it's going to be a little bit easier for Mazo to kind of get comfortable on the outside, get her strikes going, and then kind of start showing shades of that potential a lot of people expected her to have when she came into the UFC. Let's not even talk about the fucking Agapova outside of the cage antics, right? Like the bouncing around from gym to gym. Apparently, a lot of gyms kind of kicking her out. If I'm not mistaken, she's at MMA Masters now. I'm not 100% sure about that. She's exactly. Who knows where the fuck she's at? But it doesn't seem like anything is really going there. And you're going to need a solid training camp to go out there and establish the type of game plan to beat a girl like Mazo.
Dulani Perry is her manager.
Dulani Perry. Why does that sound familiar?
Huff was on DC's team. Was the guy who's always claiming he's rich. I just go to Agapova's Instagram and then go to Dulani Perry's Instagram. It is tough to know. You want to know how much of a mess things are going. Like this is.
I'll be sure to check that out. But yeah, I think Mazo has a striking advantage. I don't think that Agapova's wrestling is good enough to kind of put her on the ground, even in the striking realm. If they want to go out there and strike, Agapova a little bit unorthodox at times, but I think the disciplined style of Mazo is going to shine through here. I think she's more than deserving of the line that she's currently at, and I'd kind of be surprised if she puts Agapova out. But it really depends on what kind of Agapova we see here and how she really exerts herself. So Mazo by KO plus 480, plus 450 at certain spots. Mazo by decision plus 140, and that's the one that I'm kind of happy about and that I would take the shot on. Even though over 2.5, minus 190, not too bad in my opinion. I do think this fight goes the full 15 minutes. How do you see this one going down, dude?
Yeah, I mean, I like Mazo here. I should say, I don't want to say I love Mazo here, but like I bet her at minus 150 for a unit. The only reason I didn't put more down than that is just because I do think there's a reasonable chance Agapova could win round one here, and in which case, I could just add on live, right? And if she doesn't, she's just going to get stomped out by Mazo because, the cardio dynamic, Mazo then generally builds throughout fights and usually has her best round late, whereas, we know it's kind of the reverse with Agapova. But I'll be honest, in breaking down the fight, like I tried not to put too much emphasis on the Shanna Dobson fight. Now, obviously, it's important just to see her gas out, and like I get annoyed when I see, I'm not going to say names, but when people say things on Twitter like, oh, she gassed herself out before the fight. No, she didn't gas herself out before the fight. Watch the first 3 fucking minutes of the fight. She went so hard and had a bunch of crazy exchanges.
You know what I think actually happened in that fight, to be honest, is I think she saw the betting lines and she kind of forced herself to be like, I need to go out there and starch this bitch. I think that's what she was doing. And when it didn't work out, things went south.
No. And she did gas herself out, but like I don't buy she gas herself out before the fight. And something I noticed when going back and tape for her against girls who aren't going to try to grapple her, she almost always comes out that hot. If you actually go and look through her career, ton of round one finishes because she comes out like a house on fire all the time. She didn't on contenders because you really can't come out like that against Tracy Cortez because you're going to end up on your ass, which ended up happening anyway. And the only other time she'd been to a decision, I believe, was a similar type of fight where the girl she was fighting was trying to grind her. But so I wasn't overtly shocked that she gassed out there in hindsight, I should say. And I do think it's live to happen again, and I'd expect her to come out hot again. What really I'm trying to put that behind me. Like, I don't want to judge this too much through the lens of the Shanna Dobson fight because after the Cyphers fight, everybody's like, oh, Mariah Agapova, she's going to the top 5. Like, no doubt about it, right? Like, the opinion swings so wildly from fight to fight. Like, you got to find a medium. The thing is, I faded Mazo on her entire way up. I bet Aldrich against her. I bet Kish against her. I blasted Alexis Davis against her. What I will say, the Alexis Davis fight, look, obviously it ended up being a good bet because Davis got like 8 minutes of control time and won the fight. But if you actually look at on the feet, one of the reasons I felt comfortable with Davis was because I thought Davis could hang with her standing because I didn't like that, she doesn't box much, Mazo. And in that fight, that changed a lot, and it looked like she got a lot better. Like, she absolutely lit Alexis Davis up on the feet in a way no one really has. Not Viviane Araujo, not Katlyn Chookagian, not Jennifer Maia. And so I remember after that fight thinking, man, is Davis just done? And then she goes and fights Pannie Kianzad and basically goes 50-50 in a 15-minute kickboxing match with her in a crazy fight. And so it's like, no, she's not. Mazo is just finally coming into her own. She's a young girl who's getting better. She's now adding boxing to the kicks that she has. And like, just watching that, I get the Agapova takes. She's athletic. She hits hard. Mazo can have some poor defensive tendencies. But Mazo's striking game is so much more diverse than Maria Agapova's game is. In my opinion, I think she is going to pretty much look. Agapova could take her out in the first couple minutes, but I think Davis is going to Mazo is going to pretty much do whatever she wants to her on the feet. If I'm honest, Agapova wants to come in there, get in your face, and brawl. Mazo actually controls distance really well with those kicks, and she's not going to give her a brawl, and she's probably just going to light her up. Plus, like I said, I think the later it goes, the worse things get for Agapova. And if she does come out more measured here and wants to have a fight with Mazo, that's a fight that she is just going to get eaten alive in my opinion. So I really like the spot for Mazo. And like I said, I was high on Agapova and have been low on Mazo. But, we're talking about as much you could say, recency bias. Agapova was minus 1,400 against Shanna Dobson. Mazo was minus 300 against Alexis Davis. Like, Alexis Davis is a lot better than Shanna Dobson is, right? She beat Amanda Nunes, So
once upon a time.
But you know what I mean? That the girls having competitive fights with top 5 girls consistently. There's a huge difference here. I just, I get people wanting to bet Agapova. I don't think this is it, though. I think Mazo is a girl. Both of them could come into their own and get better. Agapova can get better for sure. She's a good athlete. But Mazo is coming into her own, and we're seeing that. And she's been fighting a much, much harder strength and schedule. So I like her a lot. In terms of props, I like the Mazo KO prop. It's anywhere from plus 450 to plus 350. Agapova does keep her left low, and we've seen Mazo land about 30 head kicks in her career so far. So that's going to be there. And then plus, if you want to get really degen with it, honestly, the plus 1,500 for round 3, plus 1,400, I don't think that's bad either, to be honest with you. So I like Mazo a lot in the spot.
Like it. I can tell just by the enthusiasm in your voice there. I did quickly scroll through Agapova's IG there, and it seems like she's been bouncing around, most notably, or at least most recently, she's been at ATT Sunrise, which is not even like, that's like one of their
she was at Sanford for like a cup of coffee too.
Yes, exactly.
like that's my it's funny because like if she was just at Sanford or at MMA Masters for the last year, I'd be like, okay, maybe we could see some huge improvements. But the fact that she's been at like 4 gyms in the last year, it's like maybe she's improved, but
it's going to be difficult. We'll see how she does this weekend, but I'd be surprised if she actually comes out with her hand raised. All right, next up, we got Matthias Nicolau going up against Tim Elliott, minus 200 on Nicolau, and plus 170 the return on Tim Elliott. I feel like we're going to have some some counter points to each other for this fight, but I really do like Matthias Nicolau in the spot. Minus 200 might be a little bit wide for a lot of people, but I do think that he can look that, if not better, if he can go out there and do what he does. Great striking, very smooth striking, crisp striker, has some decent power in his strikes as well. Black belt in jiu-jitsu, hasn't really shown crazy trouble in terms of being submitted or anything like that on the ground, or getting into too crazy of a situation for himself. He has been taken down, obviously, in the past, and that could obviously be a path to victory here for Tim Elliott, but I'd be surprised if he goes out there and Jordan Espinoza's him, right? That was probably a career best performance for Tim Elliott, at least on the latter half of his career. But another interesting stat that I actually pulled up earlier before we jumped on was Tim Elliott going into fights as an underdog is 0-5, has never been able to pull off an upset, at least from odds I was able to take off. So he's what John is saying. I do think that Elliott will get into some trouble at certain situations here, whether it's desperation takedowns or just getting a little bit too sloppy on the ground. I know this fight or this match doesn't really have too much of a bearing on what's going to happen this weekend. He did have a high rollers grappling competition that he took way back in July against Patchy Mix. Obviously, Patchy Mix, very high level jiu-jitsu player himself, and he goes out there and taps out Tim Elliott in like a minute, just grabs his neck, wraps it up, and takes it on home with him. And I think that's something that Nicolau would be able to do in this situation as well. I think Nicolau is a cleaner striker. Obviously, we know the herky-jerky style of Tim Elliott on the feet kind of leaves himself open to be hit at times. And then the grappling as well. If Tim Elliott does hit some takedowns here, I'm not sure how much success he's truly going to have on the ground here. And I do think that will either see Nicolau pull off some reversals, maybe a submission attempt off of his back, or at least get back to his feet that he can go out there and do some solid work. Cardio, I think it looks pretty good for Nicolau as well. You know, a lot of people want to say that Cap deserved that third round, and he probably sure deserved to win that fight. You know, I'm not arguing against that, but considering the pace of that fight, I'm impressed with what we saw from Nicolau in that spot. He was still going out there, throwing big strikes, landing some big shots in his own right. Cap obviously landed some pretty significant strikes near the ending of that fight, which is why a lot of people thought he deserved that decision. But, you know, I'm pretty sure you had money on Nicolau that night as well. I had money on Nicolau, and so I'm happy that we ended up cashing that ticket. But this fight specifically, I think this might be where Tim Elliott, where we see where his level at this point in his career, he's achieved the top of where he's going to be. He's going to beat guys like Ryan Benoit, which, again, close fight in its own right as well. He's going to beat guys like Jordan Espinoza, who I don't think in the UFC anymore. You know what I mean? I think somebody brought it up earlier this week that, you know, most of Tim Elliott's wins, none of those guys are in the UFC anymore. You know, so I like Nicolau quite a lot here. I knew as soon as this fight was announced that I might have a play on this. Ran the tape, very impressed with it myself. I do think that Nicolau is a top 5 guy, flyweight. Just needs to flush himself a little bit more out in the UFC now that he's back in the spot. And I think that this is a great stylistic matchup for him. So please do rain me with why I think Tim Elliott is spot this weekend.
Well, I did bet Tim Elliott. I'll say this first.
Sorry, John. I didn't even say props for this. I think Nicolau by submission. That's actually one that I like. Nicolau plus 420 via submission, and then ultimately Nicolau by decision at plus 140. But I think that sub prop is definitely worth a little bit of a shot here because Elliott, you know, a little bit too vulnerable at times in terms of giving up his neck or giving up a submission. Sorry, continue.
I did bet Elliott. I'll say this. I am probably the president of the Matthias Nicolau fan club. I was begging for them to bring him back it was one of the stupidest cuts that they've ever made from the UFC. And I think he's legitimately probably a top 5 guy at flyweight now. Like if you put him and Fig in there tomorrow, I think his style would give Fig a ton of issues. Like in terms of counterboxing, like it doesn't really get much better throughout the entire UFC than Matthias Nicolau, right? You know, the guy has as slick a jab and as slick a counter game as there is. I was huge on him against Cap. And I'm not even like, if this fight were to come out and end and Nicolau looked like a huge favorite in hindsight, I won't be blown away. My issue with Nicolau here is twofold. One, the volume of Nicolau can be concerning at times. Now, I'll say this. I think Elliott's going to put himself in Nicolau's face and kind of draw volume out of him. But the other thing is, you know, Nicolau hasn't been, and like I probably spent much longer taping this fight than I do most fights just because I was trying to find some data on Nicolau on his back, and there's just not a lot throughout his entire career. So, like, you had the Bruno Correa fight, which was ages ago, where he ended up on his back, got held down. And then you had about 2 minutes of him on his back against Felipe Efren when he sort of got held down, and one of the times he got up with a heel hook. And I can't draw, like, a firm conclusion from it because, again, you know, the sample is so small. But what I will say is, you know, I don't think I think Elliott could get subbed here for sure, but I don't think he's getting heel hooked or anything like that. And if Nicolau's going to play guard, if Elliott gets him down, that's going to be bad news in my opinion. And then on top of that, you know, Nicolau hasn't really faced a wrestler throughout his career. He fought Dustin Ortiz, but he got knocked out with a head kick about 2 minutes into that fight before any grappling happened. Elliott's a very, very good wrestler. Look, Elliott's got plenty of flaws. He's a janky striker. Has a bad tendency of putting his neck in places it shouldn't be and getting himself submitted. But I do think he's a better wrestler than anybody, even including Ortiz, that Nicolau has fought. And so you're going to see Nicolau tested in a way he hasn't been there. And so depending on how that results, like you could be saying Nicolau should have been minus like 350 in hindsight here, or Elliott should have been a favorite. And so like my bet on Elliott, it's kind of more in the okay, Elliott's an excellent wrestler who takes pretty much everybody he fights down, including like Davison Figueiredo, Demetrius Johnson, like got those guys down. You know, I'm taking a risk that Elliott can get him down and potentially hold him down. If he can't, it's going to look bad. And I will say this, in terms of props, there is a chance, and I mentioned this to you when you and I were talking about this fight, I think there is a chance that if it does turn to wild scrambles, Nicolau may just be on a different level jiu-jitsu-wise and is able to submit him fairly consistently. We'll see. So it's a small step on Elliott, kind of as a questions answered on Nicolau. In terms of props, what I do like, because I am extremely, extremely confident that Elliott's not knocking him out, and I'm also extremely confident that Elliott's not submitting him here. I like the Elliott by decision plus 300. I'm going to play that myself. You know, considering I think that's almost all of his win condition here, I'll be on that. But yeah, I'm not like passionate about it. It's a small bet. I just think, you know, I'm getting Tim Elliott at plus 170 against a guy who's never faced a wrestler at this level. I have to take the stab.
When I was putting that information together regarding Tim Elliott and, you know, what his record was as an underdog, could you line for me, or what you think the line was when he fought Ali Bagautinov? Do you remember that fight?
I don't remember the fight. I would get, I mean, Ali was good. I would guess Bagautinov minus 200.
Minus 170 Tim Elliott.
Really?
And obviously Bagautinov won that fight. That kind of surprised me. I was like, Tim Elliott was the favorite in that fight?
Dude, Bagautinov, I think he fought DJ for the title, didn't he? If I'm not mistaken. Yeah, he was pretty good in his day.
I have no idea why he was such a, you know, a moderate underdog to a guy like Tim Elliott.
But that's why we can make money doing this, man. Right?
Exactly. In hindsight, now obviously he looks like a minus 200. I can't recall, you know, what my head was thinking when he fought him back in 2013. Wow, that was November of 2013. Same night, George St. Pierre beat Johnny Hendricks. But yeah,
you're not allowed to say that in Canada, man. The SS is going to come get you if you're not careful.
Exactly. We are not allowed to speak ill of Mr. GSP. All right, let's keep this thing moving along, brother. We got 2 fights left here. Next up, we got Jared Gooden, going up against Randy Brown. Minus 225 for Randy Brown. Plus 185 for Jared Gooden. This is clearly one of those spots where it's like you have a much better technical striker and fighter in Randy Brown, but you got a guy in Jared Gooden who has absolute crazy knockout power and should be able to go out there and do some good damage on Randy Brown. One thing that I saw that I kind of like from Jared Gooden in his last couple of fights is like he is keen for that leg kick. And that's one thing I feel will be very important here against a guy like Randy Brown, who has shown, you know, an inability to check kicks, and, you know, he takes so much damage. And, you know, I would have loved to see if Alex Oliveira did not get clipped by that straight right down the middle and, you know, get planted on his butt. If that fight had continued maybe another 2 or 3 minutes on the feet and Oliveira landed a couple more leg kicks, how that fight would have turned out, right? And it didn't even seem like Randy Brown was that comfortable in terms of changing or changing stances, right? And that's something that you got to kind of have if you're willing to let your leg get chewed up. You want to be able to put that lead foot behind you and kind of fight from the southpaw stance or whatever your opposite stance is, just so that you could kind of, you know, recover that leg a little bit, heal it up a little bit with some time. But he just left it out there, and luckily for him, it worked out because he was able to plant a beautiful cross down the middle to drop Alex Oliveira, and then obviously we saw him wrap up that neck quickly thereafter. I feel as though we'll see a little bit better striking defense here from Jared Gooden, or at least a little bit better ability to kind of take that shot. And if he's able to chew up that lead leg of Randy Brown here, you know, while keeping this fight in the striking realm, because obviously Randy Brown, I feel like if he wants to take this into the safest part of his game, it would be probably to take this fight to the ground and see if he can stay away from that big power of Jared Gooden. Or Jared Gooden, sorry, I keep saying Gordon, god damn it. Jared Gooden. Right. That's where I think that Brown will have most of his success. But with that said, again, very good technical striker, and I'm kind of just throwing hypotheticals out there in terms of whether Gooden will be successful in terms of implementing that leg kick and then getting his hands going. His lead hook that he continuously landed on Nicholas Stolze time and time. It kind of reminded me of Marcin Prachnio against Sam Alvey, where Sam Alvey just kept landing the same fucking strike. That's what happened with the Stolze fight with Gooden. Gooden just kept landing that check left hook, and it kept landing, and then eventually the last one was the one that put Stolze out. I think Brown is hittable. I think his legs are detriment for him if guys are able to go out there and implement a solid leg kicking game, which I think Gooden will do, especially if you just look back at the last couple of Randy Brown fights. That's where a lot of people find success. And even if you look at Gooden fights, that's something that he does. He does leg kick. It's not like I'm just making this up and being like he needs to leg kick. If he doesn't leg kick, he kicks. So I think that but the best way to play Gooden, and I am predicting him to win. Best way to put him to play him would be the KO prop because he's not winning a decision here, right? Much better winner, Randy Brown, much better fighter overall, Randy Brown. But this is MMA at the end of the day, and I have questions about the durability of Randy Brown in this spot. So, and I will say questions about Gooden's durability as well, right? He can be knocked out, he can be finished. So, a couple different ways that I would look to play this. Gooden by knockout is probably the one that I'll probably pull a trigger on. Alternate total of under 2.5 at -125. Not too bad of a shot either. Fight doesn't go to decision, -150. Not too bad of a shot either. Again, Brown can knock him out +280. Brown could win a decision +240 as well. But the one that I'm going to be going well ultimately is Gooden by knockout, probably first or second round. And again, props Gooden round 1 +575, Gooden round 2 +800, or even just straight up if you want to cover as many bases as possible in terms of the timing of that finish. Gooden by KO +460, +400. That's where I like. How are you feeling about this matchup, dude?
Yeah, in terms of the fight, it's a little obvious like what I like in terms of props, and I don't like obvious stuff like this, especially after I'm not gonna say that especially after the main event. But the under 2.5 seems like a bit of a layup here. I see FanDuel's got it at -136. If you can get that around -150, I think that's a pretty good line. In terms of the fight, I'm pretty bullish on Randy Brown. I'd say more so than the rest of the market is. I get it. There are times where he seems fragile and seems to do stupid shit. But, the guy's a great athlete. He's got an insane reach, and he's got a very well-rounded game, right? He's a good submission grappler. He will wrestle, when it behooves him to do, when he needs to do so. And he does manage distance well. I remember in my early days of betting, which I say, God, time is really like flying. But,
dude. I see some of my old bet slips. I'm like, what? 10 years ago?
I parlayed Brian Barberina against Randy Brown, and that was
what you did.
I was like, when the fight ended, I was like, what did you do? Like, what was that? But you see Brown, if you're not going to pressure Brown aggressively and you kind of give him the space to get off, he is going to just beat you like a drum in space. He uses his distance well. He does a lot of attritional work. Those knees and elbows he uses in the clinch are really nice. It's another one of those things where it's like, if the Abubakar fight didn't happen, I'd probably be interested in Gooden here. But I was pretty sure in that fight, I'm like, if Gooden can keep this fight standing, he's going to be massive value. And then Abubakar looked his number on the feet, which is really concerning because I don't think Abubakar Nurmagomedov is anywhere near Randy Brown as a striker. And I bet Joban against Gooden, and that was a great fight. But Alan Joban's old as well, and I just think Brown's a better fighter than either of those guys at this point. So I think standing, unless if Gooden can, you touched on an important point that I think is the leg kicks. If Gooden can get off on the kicks early and often, he can maybe change the scope of this fight and really force Brown into some uncomfortable places. But if he can't, I think Brown dunks on him pretty much wherever it goes. I think he's a much better grappler. I think striking wise, not only is he better defensively, he just has a lot more tools at his disposal than Gooden. Gooden's much more boxing based, and Brown has, a variety of stuff he can throw at you. And so I do think Brown should win this fight. It's kind of funny because I was thinking of laying the number if it got under -230 and it's there now. And then it's just rewatching the Luque fight. I bet him against Luque. And in that round 2, I was like, he's starting to get off, he's starting to land his shots. And then, the way it ended, it's like, what are you doing, Randy? Just keep your hand on the goddamn canvas, dude, But I love the under here because, look, the bottom line is if Gooden does what he needs to do to win this fight, which is probably land kicks and stay in Brown's face, you're going to have a lot of heavy exchanges, and Gooden's a pretty big hitter. Someone's probably getting knocked out. And on the other side, Brown finishes most of his wins. Whether it's on the mat, if he can sub him from there, or on the feet, I think Gooden's pretty hittable, and I think he may be fairly fragile. He hasn't been knocked out that many times, but I don't know if you noticed it. I don't like the way he reacts to shots that well, to be honest with you. It doesn't seem good. So I do like the under quite a bit here. I like Randy Brown. I'm probably if it gets down to -200 or under, I'll lay it at that point, just because, look at the guys that Brown has fought, even the guys he's beaten versus the guys that Jared Gooden has fought. It's just, he's shown an ability to hang with guys near the top of the division, whereas Jared Gooden's shown an ability to kind of keep up with Alan Joban on minutes. I think Brown handles him here, but I think the under is by far the best spot.
I like it. I like it. Well, what do you think is his best path to victory, though? Submission
For
or KO?
Brown, I'd say KO. I mean, he could. That's the thing with Brown, though, and playing method props, right? Because like Brown is the kind of guy he could wobble him bad on the feet and then just randomly, sub like rear naked choke, or just do something stupid, end up with a hurt Gooden on top of him and triangle him, right? That's like Brown. It's kind of like dealer's choice, like whatever he's feeling like in the moment, So I guess the gun to my head, I would say KO, just because I do think Gooden has reasonable takedown defense. And I do think Brown's going to land heavy pretty often.
All right, let's move on to the main event and another opportunity to remind you guys, make sure you guys hit that like, hit that subscribe, and then show my guy John some love. Follow him on Twitter at MMA Fox, and then obviously check out his own podcast that he does with his guys Luke and C, who I don't think I've seen him in a while now, and even Legs as well. Shout out to my guy Danny Legs as well. Link is in the description below. Club and Sub Podcast, Wednesday nights, 10 p.m. Eastern with these sharp motherfuckers. All right, let's move on to the main event here. Very binary fight to break down. It's interesting that this is the most binary fight to break down on the card, and it's the main event. We got Mackenzie Dern going off as a minus 175 favorite, plus 155 the return on Marina Rodriguez. Now, so I am picking Dern. I'll say that right off the bat here. I do think she lands takedowns. I do think she ends up locking up a submission here. I released my solo podcast earlier today, and somebody messaged me or left a comment saying it's weird that you picked Marina Rodriguez against Amanda Ribas, but now you're picking Mackenzie Dern against Marina Rodriguez. The difference here, though, for me was everybody's kind of love for Ribas's striking specifically in that fight.
Yeah.
Everybody's like, she's such a good striker. She's going to be fine. It's not like she's a better striker than Rodriguez, but she will be serviceable enough. I'm like, I saw right through that bullshit. It looks nice when she's fighting girls that aren't Marina Rodriguez, right? Like, it looks like she has
like Gage Van Zandt.
Yeah, like it looks good there.
Brandon Marcos.
Yeah, it looks good, like because it looks flashy, right? It looks like she's doing everything right. But then when she gets punched in the face by somebody that knows how to fucking throw a punch, she don't look so good anymore. Just as we saw in that fight against Marina Rodriguez.
Dude, she got knocked out by Poliana Viana.
Exactly. That was kind of a huge thing for me, where it's like, this girl doesn't like to get punched. She doesn't like to get touched up on the feet. And now she's fighting the best striker she's ever fought. No, not happening. And Amanda Ribas did get her down to the ground in that first round, had tremendous success, but couldn't put it off a submission. What I'm trying to get to is Mackenzie Dern, in my opinion, is a much better BJJ specialist than what Amanda Ribas brings to the table. Going to drag this fight to the ground. I think it might only take one takedown for Mackenzie Dern in this situation. I do think that her chin and her durability is good enough to deal with the striking of Marina Rodriguez. She's not this crazy one-punch KO type of person. Like, she did good damage against Amanda Ribas, but again, I think that was Amanda Ribas drinking her own Kool-Aid, thinking that she's a decent enough striker, and then gets fucking starched. Whereas Mackenzie Dern, she knows that's her weak point. She's working with Jason Pearl to try to fix that. Not saying that she's going to be competitive in the striking realm of this fight, but competitive enough, or at least serviceable enough, to eventually close that distance and drag this fight to the ground. I want to give a big shout out to our guy UFC John Martian. That guy, he put out a little thread about this fight in regards to who is in more danger in the other person's realm, right? Is Mackenzie Dern in more danger being in the striking realm than Rodriguez is on the ground? I think that Dern I think that Rodriguez is going to be in way more danger once this fight hits the ground, because she can finish the fight, pretty easily. And we've talked about this on a week-to-week basis, John. Grappling is much more lower variance than what you're getting with striking. You're expecting Marina Rodriguez to throw the perfect punch, perfect precision, perfect timing, perfect speed, all that type of shit to land a good enough shot on Mackenzie Dern to eventually put her out. Whereas once Dern drags this fight to the ground, she has all these options open up for her. And I think that within the first 2 rounds of this fight, we're going to see Dern drag this fight to the ground and lock up a submission. She doesn't rush anything. And that Nino Nunes fight was perfect, right? She got the takedown, maybe 3 minutes into 2 minutes into that round, and took her time setting up that armbar, and eventually got the armbar here. And I think we're going to see the same thing here. So I like Dern. Dern by sub is obviously the best way to go about it, which is currently sitting at plus 100. But I will throw a conspiracy theory out there. Mackenzie Dern via TKO at plus 1200. When you're on the ground and pound or submission is open for you. If Rodriguez is doing a good enough job in terms of kind of defending the rear naked choke, there is an option that Mackenzie Dern could kind of, flatten her out, throw a couple strikes, and get a GMP finish. I kind of took that kind of thinking with the of Insane Prue against Alonzo Menafield fight, right? A lot of people are taking the sub. They're like, oh, that's the best way he wins this fight. But I'm like, if he gets it down, he could probably TKO him. But he didn't even need that. Fucking beautiful check left hook, fade away, gets Alonzo Menafield out of there. So it doesn't cash the way that I was expecting it to cash, but we'll see if it happens this weekend. With that said, if I am betting this fight, which I'm not doing with serious money, I would take Dern by sub in this situation at plus 100. Just, again, being conspiracy theorists, throwing out that TKO at plus 1200, it's definitely worth a shot whenever you have somebody that has as much grappling dominance as they should, as Mackenzie Dern is going to have in this situation. So yeah, I got Dern by sub first 2 rounds, plus 100 on the sub. Give me some thoughts on Marina Rodriguez. Do you think she has a shot here? And then ultimately, who do you think wins? And what are the best props for this fight?
Yeah, I mean, I think she has a shot. Yeah, I think it's a pretty complicated fight, if I'm being honest, to break down. On paper, it's obviously very straightforward. Dern by sub, or can Marina KO her before she gets subbed, right? But I bet Nina big against Dern, and it was largely because I was like, Dern's a bad wrestler. I think the odds of her really subbing Nina are quite low. And obviously I was wrong about that, as it turned out. And don't get me wrong, the takedown against Nina was very nice, but I'm not really ready to say that Dern is a wrestler on the level of a Carla Esparza, or even a wrestler on the level of Miranda Marcos, right? Now, Rodriguez doesn't have great takedown defense, but I do think, Dern's going to have to time her entries right in there, because she's going to have to shoot them low. Because I think if she tries to take Marina down from the clinch, things are going to go south in a hurry for her. Marina is super dangerous from that position. We saw Tisha try to do that, and that did not go well. And to be honest, before the Ansarov fight, I would have said Tisha's a better wrestler than Dern. The question is, how much credit can I assign her for one takedown, right? And that's a complicated question. It's I thought I liked how it looked, but at the same time, it's I have a lot of the same reservations about Dern's wrestling that I had before that fight. And I don't get the feeling with Dern that she has the tools that if she gets put on the back foot, she's going to be able to set off takedowns from the back foot. That's a very hard thing to do. And I just don't think her wrestling is at that level. So there's a lot going on in my mind about the fight, because I do sort of agree. I don't want to say one takedown and the fight is over, but there's a decent chance, right? Dern's arguably the best female jiu-jitsu practitioner ever. You touched on a really important point that is, and you saw it in the Marcos fight too, right? When she gets a position on the mat, she doesn't rush it. She has a plan. She knows she's thinking, it's like chess. She's thinking 8 moves ahead of what she needs to do here, and she's going step by step to get there. It's very, very, even though their style of jiu-jitsu, Maya is more back-taking, she's more of a guard jiu-jitsu type player, it's very similar. You can see Maya when he's going from one position to the next. And that's a level that most people just don't operate on. And so maybe it is only one takedown and she subs her. But then it's this thought creeps in my head. It's well, what if she doesn't? What if she just rides her out on top and finishes around? It's how many takedowns can I really project her in to get here? Because if her wrestling has improved dramatically and she can hit takedowns at will, well, then she's minus 1,000, right? Then we should be just throwing our whole fucking bankrolls on her. But I'm not ready to say, my opinion changed slightly. I think she's clearly worked on her wrestling. I'm not ready to say I think she's a good wrestler, though, And so it's is that enough? And it might be. But I also think as wide as the gap is on the mat is as wide as the gap is on the feet here. While they're on the feet, she is going to get beaten like a drum by Marina. And as I touched on, I have real concerns what happens to Dern when she gets put on the back foot. Is she going to be able to close distance? I don't really think so. I haven't seen, the requisite tools you need to close distance off your back foot and set up a takedown in the open mat. So yeah, it's complicated because it's the grappling differential is so wide here, but also I'm not really 100% convinced that Dern can get it there. I'm convinced she can't get there whenever she wants. I'm not 100. She basically needs to time her takedowns early enough in rounds to give herself enough time to work and finish this fight. All of that said, it's so hard to strongly back Marina just because, there is that huge gap. And so I guess picking the fight, I guess in my head, I'm the lines, it's probably lined appropriately. I think the subline could maybe be even shorter, to be honest with you. If you're going to bet Marina, if you have DraftKings, they have those decision-only props, and I'm guessing she's probably going to be, probably plus 150, plus 125 there. I don't hate that. Or better inside the distance.
When you say decision only prop, is that like no scorecards?
Yeah, so it's no scorecards, but reversed. It's only basically if there's no finish.
Ends inside the distance.
If it ends inside distance, it's a wash. Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah, it's pretty interesting. Yeah, it's fairly new in the last couple months. And so I think that's an interesting angle in terms of what I'd play though. That's widely available. I agree with you about Dern by sub. What I think could be interesting is playing instead of just taking the sub prop at plus 100, taking her in round 1 and round 2, which is, I believe, I'm looking at it. You have Dern round 1 is around, depending on the book, anywhere from plus 300 to plus 450, and Dern by sub in round 2 is about plus 700. And so I'd almost rather do that because I do kind of think if it turns out Marina can get through those first 2 rounds, she's not getting through 10 minutes on the mat, right? If she's on the mat for 10 minutes, she's getting finished here. So if she gets through 2 rounds, it's because she's getting enough top time. And if she's getting enough time on standing, she's probably going to damage Dern a lot and either finish her or I don't rate Dern's wrestling particularly highly already. After 2 rounds in the cage with Marina, I don't really think her chances to get the takedown are going to increase later in this fight. And so I think her submission chances are fairly front-loaded. So I prefer to take Dern sub round 1, Dern sub round 2. In terms of prop for the whole fight, I would just take the under 4.5. It's minus 230, but Dern's best path to victory is a finish, and she's a 60% implied favorite here. And on the feet, Marina cracks, man. Like you touched on all the stuff with Ribas. So she hits hard, and if she, Dern is a punching bag against a good striker. And so if she is not getting takedown, she is going to get teed off on here. So I'd rather lay the chalk there and play like Dern sub 1, Dern sub 2 than try to get too creative with it.
I will say the most success that we saw Waterson have in that last fight was round 4.
Yeah,
just took about 3 minutes of control time in that fight. So I'm not completely writing off Dern's ability to drag the fight to the ground and the later that this fight goes. But again, if she is having success with takedowns, she will likely have gotten a sub early in this fight.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. 100%.
Yeah, I agree with that. All right. So that's pretty much a wrap on the breakdowns here. We'll get over to the best prop bets. I do have Cody's as well, so let's just quickly get into this.
I think I did pretty well last week.
I forgot to fucking check the ones that we actually did. I honestly forgot to check. Do you recall what
I know I had Gordon and I know I had Hernandez by KO, but I don't remember what my third was.
Fuck, let me see if I can quickly remember. I think I had a D'Andrade KO, which obviously came through, I think.
Very easily.
What was the other one? Gordon by decision, I think. Yep. Yeah, I can't recall off the top of my head. I'm sure I had Santos by KO as well or something. But again, we're not talking about that fucking fight. All right. Let's pull up these 3 best prop bets for you guys. But just a reminder for you guys, tomorrow evening, Ultimate Weigh-In Show. And I'm going to have a guest on you guys aren't very familiar with. His name is Brandon Olivas. He's a former amateur MMA fighter, 6-3 record. He ended up sustaining some sort of hand injury, a nerve injury in his hand, and is not able to fully close his hand or something like that. So he ended up not competing and going on with a professional MMA career. But he does his betting show with Santino DeFranco, former guest of the show as well, Fight Ready head coach over there as well. They do a show together on Santino DeFranco's channel, betting and bets and all that type of stuff. But I've been talking with him for over the last couple of weeks, and the guy, he's a high roller. Let's put it that way. The guy bets heavy on fights. He's very confident, has a lot of good spots that he's been betting. He mainly does all of his stuff on Instagram. So if you guys want to go follow him over there, I believe it's just his name spelled out like that. And for some reason, it's an N or it's an A at the end of Brandon. I've never seen that in my life before. So it's Brandon, all of us. So make sure you guys go follow him on Instagram. But he will be on the show tomorrow evening. Again, very high level guy, studies all the tape. He does this full time pretty much, and he makes a good chunk of money off of it as well. Not tracked, so don't throw him through the mud through that type of shit. But I remember I tweeted out yesterday last week when I lost my lock of the night play on the fight doesn't go to decision on the main event of the last fight. And I'm like officially down on the night and even with untracked bets taken into consideration. And he messages me right back. He goes, the only thing that matters is money in your account at the end of the day. Fuck this untracked, And I'm like, I get it. I completely understand it. He doesn't really understand the track nature of things or selling bets, but he doesn't sell bets or picks or anything like that. So I can't knock him for that either. But the guy knows what he's talking about. He actually fought Carlos Hernandez, who fought this past week on Contender Series, and he had a pretty hefty wager on him as well, and it looks like it came through for him. All right, so tomorrow night, 9 p.m. Eastern, Brandon Olivas is going to be joining me. Make sure you guys tune in for that. All right, let's get into the actual bets here. So I'll kick things off as always. Nicolau via sub plus 420. That's where I'm going to be going with my first best bet. I think we'll see Elliott stick that neck out, and I think we'll see Nicolau take it on home with him. But I do think that Nicolau could still win this fight, even if he doesn't get the submission there. But I do like that. I feel like that definitely stood out to me the most. Next up, Colares via decision plus 420. Again, I like that 420 number, as you guys know, but I do like Colares to go out there and just grapple fuck Chris Gutierrez here. Don't give him the space that he requires to truly get his game going, which is that calf kicking game. And if you take away the calf kicking game of Chris Gutierrez, I don't think he even comes close to that minus 250 range that he's currently at. So plus 420 on Colares via decision. Lastly, I'm going to go with Winn via decision as well, plus 470. Again, I think that the line, the money line is way too wide to begin with. I do have a half unit stab on him on the money line at plus 260, but I think his best win condition is that decision. So plus 470, I'm going to be taking a shot on that as well. So some nice juicy little props there for you guys. Maybe a little bit more long shots than what you guys are going to be seeing from John and Cody in a second here, but I feel like they have a pretty good damn shot of hitting. John, let's get on over to you, bro.
Yeah, so first up, I got Elliott via decision. Like I said,
completely head-to-head there.
I'm not like super confident in Elliott, but I do think the line's a bit wide, and I think there's enough questions about Nicolau's defensive wrestling and what his get-up game looks like to justify a bet on Elliott. And if I'm going to justify a bet on Elliott, I'm very confident he's not subbing Matheus Nicolau, so I'd much rather take the decision line here, plus 275. Next up, I got Godinez by decision as well. That's minus 105. The reality is she hasn't knocked out anybody in her entire career. She has a decent submission game, but I think Juarez has, enough defensive grappling. She's probably not going to get submitted here. And in terms of the fight itself, I think Godinez just has her outclassed everywhere personally. So I'm taking the decision there. And then last up, I got the Rosa Jackson. Fight goes to decision, minus 150. Bit juicy for my taste, but to be honest, I think everybody expects, Damon Jackson to look to wrestle, probably get Rosa down like everybody does. And if he does, look, Charles Rosa, whatever you want to say about his defensive grappling, the guy has elite submission defense. He's almost certainly not getting subbed. I actually think the majority of the finish equity is in Rosa's favor in this fight. And so, yeah, I think Jackson's going to win the fight. And I think, goes the distance is probably 70-75%. And we're getting 60% implied here.
I like it. I do want to quickly shout out Joe Rogan's forehead wrinkles, who let me know what my picks were last week. Perez via decision, obviously finishes him in the second round. Serkinov can't get any of his grappling going. And then Santos, again, we're not talking about that fucking fight. That fight never happened. All right, let's get on over to Cody's three best bets that he has, or three best prop bets that he has. Some of them fall in line with what Sean had as well. First and foremost, Gutierrez and Colares goes to decision minus 180. That's what the spot that he likes. I'm assuming he sees that grapple fucking from either guys, and obviously the Colares durability, which is shown through in all of his fights. Next up, he has Rosa Jackson fight goes to decision as well, minus 150, and then lastly, he has Brown via decision at plus 250. I think he goes out there and outpoints Jared Gooden over 15 minutes. So there you guys go. Three best prop bets for me, John, and Cody. John, on the back end here, anything you want to say before we sign off?
Yeah, just check us out Wednesday night, 10 p.m. Eastern. In terms of this weekend, guys, enjoy the show. It's not the best for betting ever. If you want to degen a bit, that's cool. Don't put too much money down. What you should do, though, make some bacon, make some eggs, make some mimosas. 1:30 p.m. card. It's a great excuse to J drink. I hope you guys enjoy it.
Exactly. That's the best way to put it. I love these early cards. 1:30 p.m. Eastern start time. Wake and bake, and then go on from there. I will be doing my Fight Day live chat probably at 11 a.m. So make sure you guys check that out.
You're going right up to the card, huh?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, you know what it is. You know what it is. I appreciate you guys checking out the show as always. Make sure you guys hit that like, hit that subscribe, then go on over and show my guy John some love with his podcast, which is the Club and Sub podcast. Wednesday nights, 10 p.m. Eastern. Link is in the description below for the channel. And he is always joined by Luke from Sparring with Reality Betting, Legs the Capper, and sometimes C, which again, don't know where he is. I don't know what's going on with that guy. Regardless, appreciate you guys checking out the show, and I'll see you guys tomorrow night for the Ultimate Wayne Show with Brandon Olivas on the back end here. War Nicolau, even though I know my guy John is on Tim Elliott in the spot. But then again, you know what?
As long as Dern wins, I'm
War
cool
win,
with that too.
Exactly. War Dern win. Let's fucking go. All right, I'll see you guys tomorrow for the Ultimate Wayne Show. Take it easy.